Good afternoon, everyone. You are in the spotlight with Brian Gardner for this Friday, December the 9th, 2016. Good to have you all here for our second of two shows this week. Apologize here for the late start. Got involved in something at work and got kind of stuck there, so I do apologize for that. And usually I like to try to notify you all, but I wasn't able to do that, so I apologize. To those that are checking us out live here this afternoon, thank you to you, and to those that will be listening or watching us later on today, thank you to you as well. Let's get right on down to it here on this Friday afternoon, this football blitz show on this Friday afternoon. Let's get right on into it right now. As always, if you'd like to interact with the show and have your voice heard, you can email us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. And please remember to use the hashtag #ITSpotlight411 for anything you tweet regarding our show. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search In the Spotlight 411 on Facebook. Make sure you like us when you find us. I said this last night to those that listen or watch last night's show. To those that are just football blitz fans and only check us out on Fridays, or maybe you're falling behind on episodes or something, whatever the case may be. We're going to have some changes coming up in the next few weeks on the show, not just the football shows, but also our shows in primetime, where we're going to we're not going to get rid of anything that we do. We're not going to really change the show. We're going to be a little bit more, I guess, discussion oriented, less filler, less recappy. You know, one of the traps that you can fall into when you do this kind of thing is that you sometimes you underestimate your audience a little bit. You know, with the primetime shows, I usually underestimate my co-host because he's not able to watch as many things, as many games, as many movies, as many shows as I am. So sometimes I feel like I have to kind of recap or kind of set the scene a little bit more than I maybe should have to. And then you fall into this trap where it ends up becoming more, you waste a lot of time with filler and recap and that, and I think over the years we've kind of done that more and more, and it doesn't make for some of you like it, some of you can't. I like my co-host, you can't watch as many things, so you like that kind of thing. But for a lot of you, you're probably like, oh God, can't we just discuss get more into opinions and discussion instead of talking about what's already happened. So one of the things that we're going to be doing going forward here, and with the football shows, we only have about a month and a half left, so it's not going to really impact us too much yet, at least through this year. But with our primetime shows especially, we're going to be a little bit more discussion-oriented. Now, I'm the only one that hosts this show during the day. At night, you'll probably notice this far more. But you'll notice a little bit on these shows, too. One of the things that we do is we kind of, we go through all the games, discuss wins and losses, but we don't get into, we don't go into detail as much as we should. We don't do the time because we waste so much time doing other things. So we don't talk about, major topics that we should talk about. We don't go into things enough. We on this show, we have that mailbag segment, and that's really, at least we have that. And one of the things I'm going to try to do with this football show, because it's an easy way to do it, is incorporate some of those mailbag, instead of doing a separate segment at the end of the show for mailbag, for things that you all send in that you want me to talk about, my opinions on and all that stuff. Instead of doing that, we will kind of incorporate that throughout the show. So instead of okay, at the end of the show, somebody asked me a question, I read the question. I might bring that up during the show instead. And that way we don't have to do a separate segment oh, yeah, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? We'll bring it up during the show so that we can have more discussion and less about, so the Packers had this big win last week and, the defense did this and that. Yeah, we'll still do that, but it should bring about a broader theme. And I think we do this I think we do an okay job with some of this on the football shows, more so than the primetime shows. So I'm not, again, I don't think you'll notice, again, too much of a difference, but I'm just pointing out that there will be a little bit of differences. You already noticed how quickly I moved through the top of the show as opposed to usual. So I'm not going to belabor this point. I'm just bringing this up in case people notice things, go, hey, something's different. Just wanted to kind of point that out here on this Friday afternoon. So, and we are encouraging our audience, whether you just check the football shows out or you're a loyal fan or a listener or watcher or whatever, to email us, Facebook us, tweet us your feedback. We want to know what you think we should do to make the show better, or what you like and don't like, and ideas. We do this every so often. We kind of go through an evaluation process, where we're at, how we're doing. We want to know. Let us know and be brutally honest. Don't be afraid to be brutally honest. If you don't like something, be honest. I can take it. Believe me. It's that's the whole point of this. So, the idea is that when we start 2017, we can have a much better show and be more or less what we want to be, and not necessarily what we become, which can happen. Sometimes you go down you go in a direction you don't even realize you're doing it, and then you go, hey, okay, that's interesting, that kind of thing. So, you know, bear with us here, trial by error, that kind of deal. And the idea is to put on the best show that we can. And we're going to try to do that. And the best way to do that is to get your feedback, but also try things too. And that's what we're going to do. So, all right. So, with all that being said, we have a lot to talk about here, and we did have a very late start. So, I want to try to get this in about an hour because I don't want to go too long. It's late on a Friday afternoon. I know people are coming home from work, finishing up work, got Friday plans, all that stuff. So, we're going to try to move as quickly as we can. And thankfully, even though we do have a lot to talk about here today, I generally think we can move through it relatively quickly. So I don't anticipate a long show here. So, we'll go through the NFL last weekend, what's coming up this weekend, last night's Thursday night football game, which was huge in a lot of ways. We're going to spend a lot of time on college football. We don't have as many games to go look at because there wasn't a lot of games. So, but we will talk about the games that were vastly important. And then the playoff rankings, which is going to be a big topic here today for us. The playoff rankings came out. A lot of controversy. We'll mine through it. We're not going to do, a mailbag segment. I'm going to try to incorporate some of the questions because a lot of them were about the playoff rankings. That's what the primary topics seem to be. So we can incorporate a lot of that into the segment we're going to do on that. Because a lot of it's just going to be repetitive if we just do a mailbag segment. So we'll just kind of go over things today. And again, we should get in about an hour or so. So as we always do, we'll start off with the NFL. Last weekend. And, again, the interesting thing about, let me just point this out. All right. You're into December now. You're firmly into December now. Teams know they look at the calendar. They know what time of year it is. This is the stretch run, as we talked about. And, one of the things that I think generally happens, some teams have experience. They know how to close the season out. Some teams don't, but find a way. They're mentally tough enough to handle it. Some teams aren't. They fall off and maybe sometimes end up dropping a few seeds, dropping in the rankings, make it, but, kind of back in. And some teams just fall completely off and don't even make it and blow it. And, that's what this stretch run is. The teams that are actually still involved here and still in play, it's about it's about ultimately positioning right now and sealing it up and getting it done and punching your ticket and accomplishing what you want to accomplish or all that you feel you can accomplish at this particular stage. So that's what this is about right now. If you're a team that already looks bound for the playoffs, you're trying to lock things up, get the best ranking you can, maybe home field, that kind of deal. If you're a team that's trying to make the playoffs, or you're on the outside looking in, but kind of still around and in it, then you want to make the playoffs, and that's what you're looking at right now. That's what this is about. If you're a team that's either been mathematically eliminated or is as close as you can possibly can without being eliminated, at this officially eliminated, then you're playing for pride. You're playing to be a spoiler. You're playing to see what you have maybe for next year. You're playing for those kind of reasons. Now, we don't talk much about those kind of teams like the Jacksonvilles or the Browns or all them teams. We don't talk about those teams, but they still have, for them, these are still important games. They got to figure out, look for next year and see what they might have for next year. So, that's the general sense of where you're at right now. And that was well represented last week in some of these games. Last week, you had some further clarity. If there wasn't any clarity, remember we came into last week. There were a few teams that were barely alive in the playoff rankings, and barely alive in the playoff rankings, and generally. Some of them got eliminated this week. Some of them kind of staved off that official elimination, if you will. But you know, time is definitely not on their side. Some teams that are, in play took a step back. Some teams that are very well in hand, very good shape, continued to further that and did well. It was a mixed bag last week. Eventful, but definitely a mixed bag last week of circumstances here. Um, and that's the best way you can sum it up. Um, so when you look at who had the most impactful week, I think, as far as teams go, um, I think the team that you look at, and I'm trying to hang on a second. I'm trying to the links. I'm drives me nuts. I always try to get the links up early in the show, and I kind of forgot to do that. And now I'm getting it. I'm doing it right now, and they didn't want to. They didn't want to really cooperate, but I got them through now. So, I'll be so happy when Jeff texts back. Seriously, it's just so hard for one person to do that when they're trying to start the show. So, all right. So when you look at who had the most eventful weeks, because a lot of teams and things have really tightened up in some of these races. When you look at who had the most eventful week and the biggest and most impactful week, okay, I think you look at a few teams. Obviously, we talked about the Cowboys last week. They took care of business against the Vikings. I think the Chiefs beating the Falcons, tough game, 29-28 win. Just a tough, gritty win. They held the Falcons down. They're playing the Chiefs have a defense that's just made up of essentially backups. They've had so many injuries, and yet they've been able to do this. And the one consistent thing with the Chiefs, and we know they start out slow, they are almost unbeatable in the middle part of the season, but then they kind of tail off. And sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. But the one thing about this year, I think you're noticing, we'll talk about this in relation to last night as well, they are closing the door a little bit here. They are finishing strong this year. They really are. They are finishing. Last year, they're looking better than they did last year. This year, they got a lot of injuries, and they're kind of playing their backups. So they've done it on defense primarily. They did a great job against the Falcons. They held the Falcons offense down. Matt Ryan only had one touchdown. They kept things in play. They did what they needed to do. And they grinded it out late, and they got the win. And that was a huge win. So that's a huge, impactful win for them, setting up what happened tonight, which we'll talk about later. Last night, which we'll talk about later. The Lions go into New Orleans, handle business, 28-13. I think that's it for the Saints, even though theoretically they could make a run, but you're running out of weeks here. For the Lions, that to me is an impressive win because the Saints they've had more momentum of late over the last month. You go into their building where they're tough to beat. Your defense holds them down. Their defense is really making strides here. Forget about their offense. We know they're going to be able to put up points. They are making some great strides. This was an impressive showing for me for the Lions. These last couple weeks with the Vikings, now the Saints, they are closing the door very well here late in the season. The Lions had an impressive win. I think you look at the Packers, who are back in this thing. They're 6-6. They're charging right now. They are back in this. They had a very solid win over the Texans, 21-13. Great defense. They moved the ball well. Very good offense. It's not I won't say it's overly impressive, but it's solid. And at this point, that is what it's solid's good. It's better than bad. And they've kind of got it together. So they are back in play. The Texans take a massive hit here. Titans were in a bye. They're already at 6-6. The Colts, I think, with their Monday night win over the Jets, that was probably the best the Colts have looked in 2 years. I know people are going to say, well, it's the Jets. I don't care. The Jets have a good defense. They can keep you locked. They can keep themselves locked in. They will play you tough. Look what they did to the Patriots. The Colts could have easily. We've seen them against bad teams have struggles. They came into the Jets building, and they never let the Jets think they had a chance. Luck had 4 touchdowns. Gore ran the ball well. Hilton had a great game. The playmakers showed up. The defense showed up. They had no problem getting downfield, a 41-10 win. The Colts, to me, that was a statement. They are now 6-6. You got a 3-way tie for the AFC South. So now we have a race there. So you got that going on. Big win for them. The Buccaneers had, I think, next to the Colts, I think the biggest impact here because they beat a Chargers team who very well, was hanging by a thread. I think they run out of time at this point based on how things are playing here. They are out of time. That takes the Chargers out of play. So you take them out and put them in they're not going to make it mix at this point. But for Tampa, again, make sure that win last week mattered. Make sure it mattered. That shocking upset win mattered, right? Make sure it mattered. Don't just come right back and lose. Prove that this is not a fluke, that you're in this thing for the long haul. They did that. They beat a desperate Charger team, that knew they had to win, keep winning. They beat them 28-21 in a road game. They are 5-1 on the road. Again, in a year where so many teams are playing better on the road, they got the job done. An impressive win. They are now tied, and that's what happened to the Falcons at the hands of the Chiefs. There is now a tie in the NFC South at 7-5. Now, again, the Saints at 5-7. You don't like the chances here. I mean, mathematically, there's still a chance, but but right now it looks like it's going to be a 2-team race. And with their 7-5 record, the Buccaneers have put themselves in play for perhaps a wild card as things have rapidly changed there. We'll talk about that in a few moments. But to me, the Buccaneers, the Colts, the Packers, the Lions, and the Chiefs had the biggest impacts last weekend. The biggest impacts in terms of, really looking at not only the seeding, but also in terms of what they did for the playoff picture. Because that, to me, Lions just pretty much knocked the Saints out. The Packers knocked the Texans down to the pack with the Titans and the Colts. And then you have what the Buccaneers did to the Chargers, knocked them out, and now Buccaneers right there with the Falcons. So this picture has rapidly changed, and there were other big big shifts that happened as well. The Seahawks really officially eliminated the Panthers. Not that they didn't have a chance, not that they had a chance anyway, but they did it. 40-7, big win there. The Cardinals knocked the Redskins down, and that's what's allowed the Buccaneers. That's what's allowed the Buccaneers to come into play for a wild card, what the Cardinals did to the Redskins, because with that 31-23, great win for the Cardinals, great offense, solid defense. They knocked the Redskins down. The Redskins, remember, we had 3 teams from the NFC East in play. Well, with that loss, the Buccaneers now jump ahead of the Redskins. That's how huge that loss to the Cardinals was. So the Cardinals kind of knocked the Redskins back, and the Steelers beat the Giants in a dominant fashion, 24-14. Now the Giants are still sitting pretty well at 8-4. They're still a wild card team. However, okay, you look at the Buccaneers are now 7-5. One more loss by Giants, and the Giants are playing the Cowboys this weekend. One more loss by them, and another win by the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers all of a sudden go from just in to tying the Giants and being in that 5th wild card position. So the Giants have put themselves in a situation where things are not looking as certain for them as they were a week ago. Now they're not in bad shape, but things are tightening up there. And for the Steelers, they are able to tie the Ravens, who beat the Dolphins 38-6. A dominant game for them. Great offense, the best the Baltimore offense has looked all season. Again, Dolphins have a good defense, so this is not a fluke. 381 yards, 4 TDs for Flacco. It all came together for them. The Dolphins, who had snuck up on people, and all of a sudden were sitting there at 7-4 in the playoffs at that point. Well, this loss knocks them down to 7-5. They're still in okay shape, but now the Ravens and the Steelers have caught them. So now it's not, again, you look at this and go, okay, it's not, this wild card picture is not as certain, especially with what's happened with Denver too. So that's not nearly as certain as it once looked, where you were looking at, like, in the NFC, you're looking at the NFC East getting 3 teams in the AFC, you're looking at the AFC West getting 3 teams in. So that picture has tightened a little bit here over this last week, which can happen. It can rapidly change. And then the Bengals, even now, again, the Bengals we all assume are out at this point. I mean, I don't see a way to do it, because even with this win, they're still 4-7-1. But the Bengals beat the Eagles, and really what I think is their best win of the season. This is the best they looked all season. They scored. They moved the ball well. They scored points. Their defense was great. They did a good job, 32-14. Now, for the Eagles, that pretty much ends it for them, I think. I think it has to. I mean, I don't think there's any way they could do it. You look at the Redskins, you look at the Giants, and then you look at the rest of the NFC, I don't see a way for them to do it. So I think that puts the Eagles in that, like the Chargers, in that they're not going to make it class. So a lot of shifts. Now, Broncos took care of business against the Jaguars, Patriots against the Rams. Let's see what else happened of significance. Bears, 49ers, doesn't matter. Raiders beat the Bills, 38-24. Dominant win for them. That moved them to 10-2. Bills dropped to 6-6. Still alive, but again, especially since the Dolphins came back down to earth. You got them at 7-5, Steelers at 7-5, Ravens at 7-5. Broncos are sitting there at 8 wins right now. Still alive, but I think at this point Buffalo has to look at this and say our best chance is to win out, and then you got to get some help. So, but it was a dominant win for the Raiders in that game. Browns and Titans both had byes. So if you look at this, what does this mean? All right, so you take all this into account. You had a lot of shifting. I mentioned the teams that I thought had the biggest impact and the most impressive statements made last weekend. Then I mentioned some of the other significant wins and losses that kind of changed the playoff picture in a lot of ways, tightened it up, especially when it comes to those wild cards. It really tightened things up. The picture no longer looks as certain. The same teams are involved. Same teams are in play. So it's not about teams falling out of play or anything like that. The teams that we all thought were hanging by a thread either lost or didn't improve their standing. And the teams that were still in play, are still in play. It's just that the picture has kind of shifted where things have tightened up a little bit. As you look at the standings right now, as you go into it before last night and going into week 14, after what happened last weekend, again, things have rapidly tightened up in both conferences. You look at the playoff standings right now. Obviously, right now, going into this weekend, okay, you have New England. You had New England on top. The Raiders were in that 2 spot. That's no longer the case. You had the Chiefs up the. The Chiefs were in a wild card position. The way you had was New England, you had Oakland, you had I believe you had Baltimore and then Houston, and then you had Kansas City and Miami in the playoffs. That's what you had in the AFC. In the NFC, Dallas, which clinched a playoff spot last week by virtue of the Redskins' loss. They're the first team in. And now they are the NFC East champs, so you don't look at that. Well, they will be the NFC East champ. They just clinched a playoff berth at this point. You got Dallas at the 1. You had Seattle at the 2. You had Detroit at the 3. You had Atlanta at the 4. And you had the Giants, and you had the Redskins. Giants and Tampa, I should say. Sorry. Giants and Tampa. That's your playoff teams. With the Redskins and the Vikings Vikings, Packers on the outside looking in, and then the Cardinals, Saints, Eagles, etc. In the AFC, you have the Colts right there, the Titans right there, the Bills right there. Those are the only teams. The teams I just mentioned are the only teams I can see being in play at this point. Everybody else I think is out. I think the Chargers in the AFC, I think the Chargers are out, the Bengals are out, the Jets are out, the Jaguars, and obviously the Browns are out. The NFC, I believe the Saints, the Eagles, the Panthers, the Rams, the Bears, and the 49ers out. And I think the Cardinals are as close to being out without being out as you can possibly be. One more loss that finishes them off. All right, so that's what you have right now. Now, after last night's Thursday night football game, as we flip the script to this weekend, after last night's Thursday night football game where the Chiefs beat the Raiders, who try to pull what they usually do, which is come back late which didn't happen because Kansas City's defense really stepped up and got them that 21-13 lead. After what happened last night, the Chiefs all of a sudden move up to that 2 spot. Oakland drops to the 5 based on tiebreakers because Kansas City has won the season series. That's crucial. So on the basis of that, shows you how strong the AFC West is. Kansas City moves to the 2. Oakland moves to the 5. So right now you have New England going into Sunday. New England 1, Kansas City 2, Baltimore 3, Houston 4, Oakland 5, Denver 6. That's your 6. In the NFC, you have Dallas, Seattle, Detroit, Atlanta, New York, and Tampa Bay in that order. So that's what you're looking at as you go into last week. As I mentioned, Kansas City with a huge win last night. It was all about their defense. They got out early, came out early, did not score. Did not score in the second half, but they got the job done. Again, this makeshift defense has performed well. From 21 points in the second quarter is all they needed. They held the Raiders down. They didn't let them get back into it like other teams have. And now what they've done is they control their destiny. They are right there as a top team in the AFC. And if they can get a Patriots loss and they can win out, they can get that 1 seed, which would be huge because they're a tough place to play. Kansas City, Arrowhead Stadium's tough. Again, for Oakland, it's not over. Obviously Oakland's more than likely going to be a playoff team. They're already sitting there at 10 wins, but that's hard because you went from being a 2 seed and having home potential for home field advantage to now being a 5 at 10 wins, which is incredible. But it's the second time the Chiefs have beat them. They kind of have their number. So a great win for the Chiefs. It was a great win for the Chiefs and tough for Oakland. Eventually, you feel like eventually you're going to lose, but hey, and you play them in Arrowhead, but hey, it wasn't a bad effort by Oakland. Just Kansas City kind of plays them well, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. So this weekend, week 14, already off to a very interesting start with a big development in the Chiefs beating the Raiders and shifting the balance of power in the AFC West. There are other very crucial games this weekend, starting with the 1 o'clock from Eastern game on CBS from Buffalo, New York, New Era Field. The Steelers 7-5, 3-3 on the road at the 6-6 Bills, 3-2 at home. Bills do not draw an easy pick here. The Steelers have to win to keep pace with the Ravens here. Bills looking to win to keep in this race because a loss at 6-7 in week 14. After this, you get 3 games left. It's tough. It's very tough. I think a loss pretty much puts them in that. A loss this week puts them from we're still alive to one loss away from elimination category. So this is a must-win for the Bills. And look, defensively, we know they're going to get the job done. Steelers, really, it's a case of we've said this all year. This is kind of what the Steelers do sometimes. You have these years sometimes with them that you just never know what team's going to show up. The last couple of weeks, they've been far more consistent against the Giants last week. They look good. If they play like they did against the Giants, they'll probably win this game because they have more playmakers on offense. They have Antonio Brown. They have Ben Roethlisberger. Whereas the Bills rely heavily on Rashawn McCoy to move the ball. If they don't get a good game out of McCoy, it's pressure on Taylor, and sometimes it doesn't work out so well. I like the Steelers here. I think the Bills missed their chance. I don't think they have enough playmakers on offense, and I think that's shown the last year and a half with them. I like the Steelers here. Even on the road, I like the Steelers here. Big game here. Another big game in this 1 o'clock window. 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern on CBS from Nashville, Tennessee. The 8-4 Broncos, 4-2 in the road. The 6-6 Titans, 3-3 at home. Broncos trying to win to keep pace with the wild card, keep pace, maybe close the gap in the division. Titans right now coming off a bye. Sometimes you worry about that. We've seen that with the Vikings. We've seen that with a few other teams this year. We come off a bye. Sometimes they just don't look good. There's a lot of rust there and such. So this is an important game for the Titans. They're in a 3-way tie for first in the AFC South. You got to win to keep pace. Titans have early in the season, it was more about their defense. Over the last few weeks, their offense has really come alive. Mariota's been great. Murray's been great. So you expect them to really try to go. They're going to try to go downfield. They're going to try to move the ball, move the chains. They're not a team like they were in the beginning of the season where they're content to do time of possession and that kind of thing. They will move the ball quickly. They will go for explosive plays downfield if they see it. They will exploit that if it's there. This is a home game for them. Denver, it's been all about their defense the last year and a half. If their defense performs up to par, then I think they have a good chance here even on the road. If it doesn't, then I think they're in trouble because I think Tennessee has proven. I would never said this 2 months ago. Tennessee has proven that they are not a fraud here. They are not a pretender. They are a legit contender here. They have played very, very well over this last month. And, Denver's going to have its work cut out for them. Mariota is becoming an explosive player. DeMarco Murray moves the chains. They got a tough task on their and tough task for themselves on Sunday. And realistically, you look at this, it's week 14. You got 4 games left. I honestly believe if you're looking at the AFC South, I think the team that wins at least 3 out of 4 is going to win it. And I know that seems like an obvious thing to say, but some of these teams have tough schedules. So, I think first team to 9 is probably going to do it. 8 wins ain't going to do it. 9 wins will probably do it. So, I like the Broncos here only because even as good as the Titans have played over the last month, I trust the Broncos defense more than I trust the Titans as a whole because, again, you haven't seen this team as a collective unit do anything huge like Denver has winning the Super Bowl. So even though Peyton Manning's not there anymore, so I trust Denver more and I like their defense more than I like the Titans offense. So Denver for me in this game. Another big game, 1:00 p.m. Eastern on Fox from Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, PA. The 6-5-1 Redskins, 2-3-1 on the road, 5-7 Eagles, 4-1 at home. Eagles really need a miracle. Again, I don't think they're going to – I think at this point they're pretty much out. But they can relish the idea of trying to knock the Redskins out because a loss here moves the Redskins to 6-1. And to me, that would put the Redskins in dire straits, 1 loss away from elimination with a loss here to the Eagles. And the Eagles have, even though they're 5-7, they have, to me, they never have played a bad game, an outright bad game. They haven't. They just haven't played a bad game this year. They played some games that, they didn't play as well as they did some weeks, but they, for the most part, have been okay every week. So you're going to get a good effort here. The question is going to be, can the Eagles keep Kirk Cousins from going downfield and getting the explosive big play? If you can keep the Redskins contained to smaller plays, contain that offense, they probably will win, especially at home. I'm actually going to pick the Eagles here. I did not like the way the Redskins played last week. I do think the Eagles have what it takes to contain the Redskins offense. So because of that, I'm going to pick the Eagles to win this game. And the Reds, if that happens, the Redskins take their playoff chance take a huge hit, even huger than last week. Another big game, 1:00 p.m. Eastern game on Fox from Miami, Florida. The 5-6-1 Cardinals, 1-4 on the road, 7-5 Dolphins, 5-1 at home. Really, I think if the Dolphins lose this game, they're out. Even though they're at 7-6 still, I think they're out. It's just you look at the rest of their schedule. I think I just don't see it. If the Cardinals lose, they're out. So essentially, to me, this is a game that will knock one team out. I mean, you look at the Cardinals; they lose their 5-7-1. If the Dolphins lose their 7-6, now that's still a lie. But again, you're running out of games. So that's why that game last week, if Miami had beaten Baltimore, then maybe a loss here would have hurt them as much. Although I think Baltimore at this point is playing better than Arizona. So Arizona's a tough team. They looked much better last week, looked more like the Arizona Cardinals of old last week. I like the way that they're playing. They still think they have a chance. Bruce Arians seems to be doing okay, thank God. I like Arizona here because Dolphins, you look at it, yeah, they've beaten some good teams this year. But, generally, they've had a very soft schedule for most of their run here. Sometimes that gets you out of the habit of some good habits. Sometimes it sets you up with this. It makes you think psychologically that it's easier than it actually is. Sometimes it can mess with your head. Early in the season they were struggling, and they were looking for ways to get back in it, and they were looking for ways to make a statement, and that's what they did most of their damage against good teams. They haven't done that recently. So I'm taking, and so the teams that they did beat were playing pretty poorly at the time they seen Miami. So I like Arizona here. They come in with momentum. They played probably one of their better games of the year last week, while Miami played one of their worst. I like Arizona here. I think Arizona's offense presents a lot of challenge for Miami. I like the way Arizona's defense played last week. If you get a similar effort, I think they beat Miami pretty solidly. So, um, this game I'm going to go through quick because to me it doesn't really matter much anymore. I mean, it's just because I think both teams are out. One of them's definitely out. The other one's pretty much out. 1:00 Eastern game on Fox from Charlotte, North Carolina. 5-7 Chargers, 2-4 on the road. 4-8 Panthers, 3-3 at home. Really, it's more for pride than anything else, and for your record from anything else. Carolina's at home. Doesn't seem to matter this year. They're 3-3 at home. Chargers, they like playing spoiler, but there's not even any spoiling on tap here. This is not much going on in this game. At this point, I'll go with the Chargers only because I think they've been playing better. And they've been a little more consistent this year. Panthers look like they're just ready to play out the string and get out of there. This has never worked this year for them. They lost a lot of close games. I'll take the Chargers here, but again, not much on the line here. 1:00 Eastern game on CBS from Cleveland, Ohio. 4-7-1 Bengals, 1-5 on the road. 0-12 Browns, 0-6 at home. Battle for Ohio. Again, we're not going to waste too much time in this game. It doesn't really matter. Neither team's really going to go anywhere this year, and we all know the Bengals are far and away better. The Browns probably aren't going to win a game this year, so Bengals all the way. Next game matters for one team, does not matter for the other. 1:00 Eastern game on CBS from Detroit, Michigan. 3-9 Bears, 0-6 on the road. 8-4 Lions, 5-1 at home. Gotta beat the team. We talk about this all the time. You play a team like the Bears at 3-9, and you're an 8-4 team trying to make the playoff, solidify your playoff spot. Gotta beat the teams. Gotta beat the teams you're better than. Gotta beat the teams you should beat. This is a team they should beat. The Bears, they don't have their quarterback. He's done for the year. They haven't played very well. They've been very inconsistent. They are out of it. Lions have been playing their best football arguably over the last month. Their offense is clicking. Their defense is clicking. This should be a one-sided affair. Detroit should, especially being at home, Detroit should win this game, and I think they will win this game. And I think they need to win this game because this is a game they definitely should win. Big game, big game. 1:00 Eastern game on CBS from Indianapolis, Indiana, Lucas Oil Stadium. 6-6 Texans, 1-5 on the road. 6-6 Colts, 3-3 at home. You see who the Titans are playing. You see they're playing the Broncos. So winner of this game, you might think, oh wow, the Titans have a tough game there. If they lose that game, we win this. We gain a game on two teams at once. That's huge. So the winner of this game gets a huge boon here, and a chance to kind of put themselves in very good position here. Here's the thing. If you're the coach, you lose this game and you end up tying, let's say they end up somehow tying with the Texans, you don't make it because you blew that game early in the season when you had the big lead against the Texans. So, this to me, this is huge for the Colts because, if this ends up being a tie kind of situation, you have no hold on the Texans. So this is huge. It's huge anyway. Colts are at home. They played their best game probably in 2 seasons last week. If they can carry that momentum in and play that well this week, they will win. Because here's the thing. While the Texans are 6-6 and they've been better than maybe we thought they would be, okay, you look at the Texans, they played their best football at home. They're 1-5 on the road. All right, they've struggled at times offensively. Osweiler struggled at times. They've struggled at times to move the ball. Their one consistent thing has been their defense. But at the same time, their defense, very similar to the Jets, who the Colts shredded last week on the road, which is why I think this game will belong to the Colts. I actually think the Colts will win this game, and I think they'll win it big. Especially given the fact there's an extra motivation because they blew that game in Houston. They know they should have had that game. And if they have that game, we're not talking about this game in the same way. So I think the Colts win this game. I think, Texans came off a bye, did not look good. I don't like the offensively. I think they obviously struggled last week a little bit too, but they've had their struggles during the year. Defensively, they compare very similarly to the Jets, who the Colts just beat. I like the Colts here. I think the matchup's in their favor here. And really, the Colts had the Texans beat in Houston. They did. So I like the Colts here. 1:00 Eastern game from Jacksonville, Florida on Fox. 6-6 Vikings, 2-4 on the road. 2-10 Jaguars, 1-5 at home. Jaguars, you got to be careful here. I know they're 2-10, but they will give you an effort. They were kind of like what Tampa Bay was doing last year. They play well despite their record. They will give you a game. And with the Vikings having problems on offense, unlike the beginning of the year where they were running the ball effectively and moving the ball, with the Vikings having trouble scoring the football and relying so heavily on defense, this is a game you worry about if you're a Vikings fan, and they need to win this game. This is a game that they should win. Even they are better than the Jaguars. They have to win this game if they're the Vikings, because otherwise, I think they're in that, hey, you're 1 week away from elimination group. So big game for the Vikings. They have got to move the ball. They've got to run the ball effectively. The Jaguars have a very solid defense. It's going to be hard to do it, but you have to do it. You have to run the ball effectively here. That's going to be the key. If they run the ball effectively, take some pressure off the quarterback, they have a good chance here. If they don't, then they're not going to win this game. Jacksonville will find a way to win. I'm picking Minnesota to eke out a win here, but this should be closer than it probably should be. So Minnesota, I think, will win, but not by much. Let's jump to the 4 o'clock window of games. First game we're going to talk about, 4-5 p.m. Eastern CBS from Santa Clara, California. 3-9 Jets, 2-4 on the road, 1-11. 1-11 49ers, 1-5 at home. Again, game doesn't matter much. I'll take the Jets because I just think they're flat out better. Fitzpatrick isn't playing too bad. I know they got destroyed by the Colts last week, but I think they're better than the 49ers. Their defense is probably better than the 49ers, and offensively they have a few more playmakers than the 49ers. So, yeah, I'll take the Jets here. Game doesn't matter much, obviously. So, all right, 4:25 p.m. Eastern on Fox from Tampa, Florida. 5-7 Saints, 2-3 on the road. 7-5 Buccaneers, 2-4 at home. This is the Saints elimination game. Again, I feel like they're already out, but if you want them to be officially eliminated, if they lose this game, they are. It's a big game for Tampa. Again, make what you've done matter. Don't just give it back. This is a game against a division rival. The Buccaneers have always had a good history of knocking off their division rivals in their building, especially even when it was considered a major upset. Here it wouldn't be because Tampa's playing so well. They have not played as well at home this year, but this is a chance here. The Buccaneers have got to, I think the Buccaneers have got to win. This is a psychological game for them. It's a game to build momentum. This is a game to build confidence. This is a game that if you win this, you recognize you're at 8-5, and you really will control your own destiny. You are now in the playoffs as of right now. You control your destiny right now, and to keep pace with the Falcons, you might not even have to worry about a wild card. You can win the division at this point. So this is a key game for the Buccaneers. I actually like Tampa in this game. I like the way they're playing. Their offense is clicking now. Their defense is clicking now. They look like a complete team now. I like Tampa to win this game, not by much, but I think Tampa will win this game. They're playing with a confidence. That Seattle game made a huge impact on them. I like the way they took care of themselves last week, even when they got down against the Chargers. I'm taking Tampa here. 4:25 p.m. Eastern game from Los Angeles, California. 7-5 Falcons, 4-2 on the road. The 4-8 Rams, 1-4 at home. Falcons all the way. The Rams kind of went through they struggled early offensively. They kind of went through a period where they kind of found some offense, and they kind of fell off. Atlanta's Atlanta's going to be pissed because of what happened last week against the Chiefs. Offensively, the Rams have the Rams have a good defense, but it's not going to matter. The Atlanta Falcons offense is so good. It's so good, and with the Rams not having much of an offense to speak of, I think that that kind of is going to aid the Falcons a little bit too. So I like Atlanta here. I like Atlanta here big to win this game. 4:25 p.m. Eastern game on Fox from Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. 8-3-1 Seahawks, 2-3-1 on the road. 6-6 Packers, 4-2 at home. Boy, if you're the Packers, you hate this. You hate this because here's the thing: you just got yourself back to 500. What's your gift? You get Seattle at Lambeau Field. Now, granted, you get them at Lambeau Field, and Seattle has struggled on the road this year. They're not the same team on the road, so there's that. And Green Bay has played their best football the last 2 weeks on both offense and defense. So, you feel good about it. You feel good about it at least. You got confidence here. I'm going to probably shock some people here because I think most people would expect me to take Seattle because they played far better as a whole this year than Green Bay, and they do have the better defense, and and the kind of defense they play usually give Green Bay fits. But I'm picking Green Bay here because I like the way they're moving the ball on offense. I think the way that they're moving the ball, they're balanced attack, running the ball, and not necessarily always looking deep, but taking what the defense gives them. The way that they play the last 2 weeks, I think will help them against a team like Seattle, especially at home, because you're not going to commit as many mistakes and turnovers again playing it that way. as you would if you were playing the way the Green Bay used to play. So sometimes the cautious approach doesn't work, but against a team like Seattle, I think it does. So I'm taking Green Bay here in what should be a very close game, and that might be a little more low scoring than most people would like it to be, but I'm taking Green Bay here. Big game. 8:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC, the Sunday Night Football game from MetLife Stadium, East Rutherford, New Jersey. The 11-1 Cowboys, 6-0 on the road, versus the 8-4 Giants, 5-1 at home. The Cowboys wanted to avenge the only loss they've had on the season. Remember, that wasn't by much. They're unbeaten on the road. This is a game that, look, if the Cowboys win this game, they know they got the division. They're more than likely will lock up the first. Actually, they would lock up home field. And this is their rival. This is the team that knocked them off and is who's kept them from being unbeaten. There's a lot of motivation here for Dallas. For the Giants, they recognize that last week's losses put them in a slightly vulnerable position. A loss here puts them in an even more vulnerable one. Offensively, it was not good by the Giants last week. It was their first, again, some people have made the criticism that the Giants are like the Dolphins, where they really haven't been tested, and a lot of their wins have come against bad teams. You can make that argument. And when they played good teams, they have not played well on offense. They have not moved the ball effectively. They are not spreading the wealth to the other receivers. Eli Manning's been just essentially looking for Odell Beckham Jr. on every play. These are problems. There are still problems within the Giants offense. And this game could, if they don't fix them or figure out a way to move the ball effectively and spread the ball around, they're going to have problems because Dallas's defense is going to lock them down. They're not really running the ball well either. So this game could get ugly really, really fast, even at home for the Giants, if their offense doesn't perform better than it's been, especially against good teams. So I'm going to take Dallas here because Dallas is the best team in the NFL right now. I mean, and they're playing so well, and there's a lot on the line for them here. And based on the way the Giants offense played last week, I don't have a lot of confidence in them. So Dallas for me here, but I'm hoping it's a good game. I'm hoping it doesn't go the way I fear it might, but who knows? But I'm picking Dallas. Monday night game is a pretty big game because because again, I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I thought that the Patriots didn't have a chance to lose again. I'm going to change that assertion right now. 8:30 p.m. Eastern game Monday night on ESPN Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. The 7-5 Ravens, 2-3 on the road at the 10-2 Patriots, 4-2 at home. Patriots regained momentum last week. Patriots right now looking to lock up that home field. Obviously, that's always key for them, getting the AFC Championship game in their building. It's always a big advantage for them. The Ravens on offense are playing their best football. They had their best offensive game last week against a pretty good defense in Miami. Defensively, we know what they can do. If the Ravens offense can play and move the ball the way it did last week, I actually like the Ravens to beat the Patriots. The Ravens have always done very well against the Patriots, even in Foxborough. They match up. Their defense has always found a way to match up well with their offense, stop the big play threats downfield. The Patriots are banged up a little bit. Brady's been banged up. They do not have Gronkowski. I'm going to take the Ravens here. A month ago, I wouldn't have said it, but I am now. I'm taking the Ravens here to beat the Patriots in Foxborough, and that could be key because that would drop them to 10-3. The Chiefs are at 10-3. The Raiders are at 10-3. That could be key if that happens. So, but Ravens, I'm taking in that game for the upset. So that is your Week 14 NFL games. A huge week, actually almost every game is a big game. So a huge weekend of NFL games in Week 14 that will have a lot of things to say about the playoff picture. So big week on tap for the NFL. All right. We jump to college football now. And obviously that was the big story last weekend. You had conference championship Saturday. And then you had selection Sunday for college football. And as we look back at last week, a lot of these things played out. Everything played out exactly how we thought. So I'm not going to go into all the games and stuff. Everything played out exactly how we thought. You had, even though it looked good for Wisconsin early, Penn State beat Wisconsin with a dominant showing. Now, for some people, it wasn't nearly dominant enough, and that some people are, and obviously the committee didn't feel like it was dominant enough. And then some that think that maybe that hurt them. I don't think so. I think there's another thing that hurt them. We'll talk more about that later. But Penn State took care of business 38-31, wins the game. Clemson beat Virginia Tech 42-35. It was closer, pretty close, but they won the game. Alabama did their thing. So, and Washington, we talked about this last week, beat Colorado 41-10. So everything that we thought would happen did, as far as the playoff situation goes. And that really didn't allow for anybody else to kind of get into play, like Oklahoma, who beat Oklahoma State in their game 38-20. So that set the stage for the playoff rankings. Now look, the scenario that we had was this, okay? We knew Alabama was in, win or lose. We knew that with a win, Washington was likely in, even though they have really the softest profile of any of the teams, okay? We knew that Clemson with a win was going to be in. That's 3 spots likely taken. So then, then you look at this and go, all right, how does this work? If Penn State wins, like we all thought they would, does Penn State get into the playoff over Ohio State, or do you take Ohio State? Michigan was never going to be in play unless a lot of things happened. Wisconsin, even if a win, was not going to be in play. The argument was Penn State had beaten Ohio State. So how could you put Ohio State in over Penn State? And I agree with that argument. Because I don't think you could, but they did. And that's the thing. That's what our mailbag was for. How nobody had a problem with Alabama at 1. Nobody had a problem with Clemson at 2 because they are the 2 strongest teams. They have the strongest profiles. Nobody had a problem with Washington at 4 if they were going to make it. They are the weakest profile, and everybody expected to make it, so there's no issues there. The problem is Ohio State. Now, is Ohio State one of the top 4 teams in the country when they play like they're capable? Yes. How does their profile stack up? Better than Washington's, and arguably probably better than Clemson's. So it's not an issue of strength of schedule, at least to me. It's not an issue of whether they are a good team. They are a good team. The issue here is this. How much do you value the head-to-head matchup? Now, there's this talk that, well, Penn State lost to a team that lost early in the season by a lot, blah, blah, blah. To me, if that's the reason they didn't get in, because of an early season loss, to me, that's absurd. Because you can look at any of these teams outside of Alabama and look at what they were in September or even early October and go, they're not what they were back then. Teams grow throughout the season. They get better. And if they sustain injuries, they sometimes get worse. To me, if you're saying that, and I'm not saying that it should not matter. It should be a factor. Depending on who that team is, you might look at it and go, well, you know what? They lost to that team, and if we put them in the playoff, they're going to play this team. Do you think that that means that they're the best team that we can put in here based on that performance? I mean, I don't mind including that. I think that's important. But that should not be what kept them out, because to me, head-to-head needs to matter. To me, a conference championship needs to matter. They didn't even win their conference. Ohio State did not win their conference. They weren't even in their conference championship game. Penn State beat them head-to-head. There's a lot of reasons here to keep Ohio State out. The only reason you have against Penn State making it is that apparently that early season loss. And maybe the fact they have 2 losses, which I think is absurd. It doesn't matter how many. Like, if you have 6 losses, that's different. 5 losses, that might be different. 4, maybe, okay. But if you have 3 or 2 losses, how is that an issue if you're a good team? They play in the same conference as Ohio State, and they won that conference. They won that championship. And they're not even in the playoff. The team that they beat is in the playoff. What kind of message are you sending to conferences? Then again, college football has never seemed to value the conference championship so much as like college basketball does. To me, it's absurd that you're a conference champion and the team that you beat head to head makes it into the playoff over you. How do you justify that? Oh well, Penn State lost in September and lost by a lot. No. Penn State is not that same team. Their offense is like night and day. They're such a better team than they were in September. It's not even funny. And I'm going to tell you right now. Yes, Ohio State has the better chance to beat Alabama. Yes, Ohio State has the better chance to beat any of the teams in the field than Penn State does. No question. Is Ohio State better than Penn State? Yes, I think they are. But sometimes you like the Cinderella story. And 2 years ago, Ohio State was a Cinderella story. And they stormed into the playoff and they beat Alabama. They won the championship. Penn State could have done that too. Because I think they had that potential. They had a lot of momentum. And they could have added some interest to what is a stale playoff, because it really is. The only team that has anything interesting going for them is Washington, and that's it. People are not going to care about another Alabama dominance. And there's not a lot of faith in Clemson. No disrespect meant, it just isn't. And again, and even though Washington is the most interesting team, a lot of people don't feel a lot of faith in because they played a softer schedule. So, Alabama, Ohio State, which is something we've had how many times already? I mean, does that interest anybody? Does anybody want to see that again? There's some of you that mentioned, and you asked in the mailbag this week, do you think that, the Penn State scandals, the past history wasn't impacted? Do you think that was in people's minds? And I don't know. I think it's a fair point to bring up. It's an uncomfortable point to bring up, but it's a fair point to bring up. It should have been more about the performance on the field and everything else, but human nature, I guess. At the end of the day, we can talk about it, we can deliberate, we can belabor this. At the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. We have our 4 teams. It is what it is. And I will say this much. What they've done is they've created some interesting games outside of the top 4. I mean, they've created some interesting games. I mean, that's the positive. And the problem they're going to face is some of these games outside the top 4, outside the playoff, might end up being more interesting than the playoff games. That's the problem they're going to have. Now, we don't know the full bowl schedule yet. We'll be getting that soon. But we'll talk. Obviously, we'll do a bowl preview. Actually, we do have some of the games already. It's going to give you a sense of some of these bigger games. Look, you got Auburn, Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl, USC, Penn State in the Rose Bowl, which is a great game. Western Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, Iowa. You got some great games. And those games might be better than the one in the playoff. So that might be, they've kind of, this playoff thing, the first year they got lucky, it was great. Last year it ended up being very bland. And this year, the playoff might be bland. It's like last year, and the games before it end up being better. So, I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? At the end of the day, you can't change it. Do I agree with what they did? No, I think it's a joke. I memean, you just said that conference championships don't matter, regular seasons don't matter. What really matters is, and it does come down to the fact it's Ohio State. Because I think if that were like, let's say that was Wisconsin, Ohio State spot, that we wouldn't have done that. It's Ohio State. That's what it is. It is what it is. So, again, we'll do a bowl preview as we get closer. And look, we'll preview it. Hopefully it ends up being a good playoff. Hopefully it does. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be boring as hell. And Alabama's going to win. I mean, Ohio State has the best chance, but I still can't pick against Alabama. I can't. Not this year. So, all right. It is closing in on 5:30 p.m. on the East Coast. We are going to wind down. It is, again, getting later, so we don't want to, we do not want to go too long here because I know you have weekend plans and all that good stuff. So we will move on. We will wind down. As always, the show might be over. Does that mean you have to stop interacting, contributing to the show? Give us your feedback. Again, we're really pushing. We really encourage you to give us your feedback, so please do. On the show and everything. We value that, so please do that. Again, be brutally honest, please. Your feedback, questions, opinions, reactions, comments on the show, things we said on the show, things we talked about, topic ideas, breaking news items from sports, entertainment, and wrestling that you want us to cover. Any of these things you can do by email, Facebook, and Twitter. You can email us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. Make sure that you use the hashtag #ITSpotlight411 for anything you tweet regarding our show. And remember, you can find us on Facebook. Just search for In the Spotlight 411 on Facebook. Make sure you like our page upon finding it. Again, as always, we encourage you to follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. Just search for In the Spotlight 411 on Facebook and Twitter so you can keep up to date on our show, any updates, announcements, postponements, delays. And then we post random stuff on there as well. So make sure you follow us on social media. If you'd like to keep up with our show, look back at classic episodes. Maybe miss an episode, miss the Parvin episode, or whatever the case may be. 2 ways to do that. You can either stream us on Google Plus and YouTube, search for In the Spotlight 411 on both sites, and you'll have access to all of our more recent episodes. Everything from October 2015 to today's episode is available in streaming form for you on Google Plus and YouTube. Just search for In the Spotlight 411, and you'll have access to those episodes if you prefer to stream us, or if you're interested in more recent episodes. If you're interested in older episodes, maybe prefer to listen to us on the go, maybe you're more of a fan of audio podcasting, then you might want to check us out on our main host sites, Podbean and iTunes. Just search for In the Spotlight 411 on Podbean and iTunes. And when you get to our show pages, you'll have access to every episode of our show we've ever done over the 6 years we've been doing the show. Those episodes will be in order from the most recent episode to the oldest on our show pages on both sites. So, if you're a longtime fan and want to look back at episodes from 3 or 4 years ago, maybe you're a new fan that never seen or heard those episodes, or again, if you missed an episode, whatever the case, you can do all that over there on Podbean and iTunes. Search In the Spotlight 401. So, if you want to listen to us on the go and you're more a fan of audio podcasting, go to Podbean and iTunes. If you're a fan of streaming and maybe only interested in recent episodes of our show, then you got Google Plus, YouTube. So, 2 ways to keep up with the show. Look back at classic episodes and all that good stuff. So feel free to utilize those resources if you need to. I want to thank myself for a great show, pat myself on my back, and thank all of you for your continued support and your contribution to the show. Thank you so much for watching on this Friday afternoon. And to those that will be watching or listening later, thank you to you as well. Again, sorry for the late start and all the delays and postponements this week. It's been a crazy week for us, but we got through it. Thank you for your patience and your understanding. We do appreciate that so much. So thank you so much to you all. And next week, again, we're hoping to have 3 shows, hopefully, bearing any problems or anything like that. We'll have our Tuesday and Thursday primetime shows on YouTube Live, both at 9 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday and Thursday of next week. Tuesday will be a sports entertainment show. Anything outside of football we have to cover, baseball, college basketball, that whole deal we'll do on Tuesday. Also, we'll have our college basketball preview segment, show, I should say, on Tuesday. So we'll be doing a lot of stuff with that. College basketball, looking at general overview of the season, make some predictions, all that good stuff. And then, of course, we'll be doing usual entertainment stuff, box office beat, all that good stuff on Tuesday. Next Thursday, being all wrestling show previewing WWE's Roadblock pay-per-view. We'll go over all the matches, make predictions, and if anybody wants to submit questions or comments either before the show or during the show, they can do that, and we'll address some of those as well. And of course, next Friday will be our next edition of Industry Football Blitz. So that's what's coming up next week. And then that next Friday, hopefully, will be at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. We started really late today. I don't anticipate that happening next week, but as always, could change. So, all right, so that's next week. Until then, please, everyone, have a great rest of your Friday, a great weekend, and a great start to your week next week. We'll see you back here for our next show. Next Tuesday night, Tuesday night in prime time, 9:00 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube Live until Tuesday, which is December the 13th. Until then, I hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.